Can I say something before we begin? The person who made up the term honesty is the best policy was probably the world's biggest liar. And with that, let me introduce law number 10. Be selective with who you give your truth. So we're at law number 10 now. We're at the double digits, and I wanted to do something special for this law. I hope that you take something away from this because I learned so much when I was putting this law together. This was not an easy one to put together to begin with. So hello to all the pretty girls joining us today. I know that there are still a lot of new people who are tuning into the podcast, so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a podcast about how we are taking advantage of all the systems that are meant to control us, the systems that are here that we can't really change, like the patriarchy. And we're doing this through the Girly laws of power, which is my feminine twist on the 48 laws of power. So my name is Nikki. I am your host. I am the baddest bitch in the building. Not to be confused with you, who is also the baddest bitch in the building. If you like the podcast, feel free to rate it 5 stars or drop a like, a comment, or don't. Like, honestly, it's up to you. All right, let's get the theme song going. So let me kick this episode off with an analogy that I actually came across when I was looking for counter arguments to this law. And as I did more research on why honesty is so important and why we should never ever lie, I came across a lot of content from Jordan Peterson. I know he's a controversial character. He does have some really interesting stuff to say, so I actually learned a lot. And then I came across this one lecture where he used this analogy that was so interesting that I actually went back into the episode and I rewrote a bunch of it so that I could incorporate this one analogy because I found that it was so powerful. Basically, what Jordan Peterson was saying is that as a woman, your lived experiences, your hopes, your fears, your dreams, your traumas, everything that makes you who you are and who you aspire to be is like a garden. So your truth is basically a garden that you have grown and cultivated throughout your entire life. And part of protecting that garden is making sure that the wrong people don't come into it. So you set up gates, not walls, but gates to protect it. And when you come across a new person or a new relationship, that person has to earn the right to access that garden. You don't just give anybody full access right off the bat. It's built over time, little by little, and you guard your garden as an act of self-respect. And this is Jordan Peterson's exact words. He said, "A woman's inner world is too valuable to be shared all at once." And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is speaking so much facts. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I came in here expecting to rip this guy's lecture apart and I'm like taking notes. And he said, this isn't deceit, it's wisdom. And I'm like, okay, all right, he might be onto something. This guy might just be onto something. So all that to say, your truth is your garden. And you're not just going to let any buffoon come into the garden. It's just, why? I'm going to take a quote from one of my favorite movies of all time, Shrek. Shrek says to Donkey, "Ogres are like onions. We have layers." Now, a woman is not an ogre, but we also have layers, okay? We are also like onions. But what is a sexier version of an onion? Like an onion, I just feel like, it's very fitting of an ogre, but I just feel like we need something more sexy. Anyway, we live in an unfair world. That's just the reality of it. We live in an unfair, ruthless world where everyone wants access to your truth, even if it means lying to you. Because people understand, men especially, understand how sacred a woman's garden is and how valuable access to that garden is, either for good purposes, to get to know you and to be a good partner to you, for example, or for bad purposes, to manipulate you, to use your fears against you. Because the truth is not the default. That is something we need to really, really, really understand, is that the truth is not the default. That's why the entire justice system exists is a whole system to try and get to the truth. That's why you have to swear under oath when you go into court, because they know you're not legally obligated to tell the truth unless they make you tell the truth. So the truth is not the default. Stop assuming that anywhere you go, anyone you talk to, you're going to encounter honesty, because that's just a naive way of going about the world. And that's not your fault if you think that, because we go our whole lives being told stupid things like honesty is the best policy. So we're brainwashed to think that, okay, everyone's telling the truth, so I have to tell the truth. But that's not the truth. That's not true. And keeping women honest is one of the ways that the patriarchy is able to function. So everybody knows that women's truth is something that is so valuable and so priceless, and everybody wants access to it. And people are lying to you from every single direction, trying to get you to open a gate into your garden for them. Don't do it. Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Oh my gosh, the stupidest saying to me is, only the truth will set you free. Set me free from what exactly? The peace I have by protecting my truth from people who don't have my best interest at heart? Because if that's what it means to be free, then I don't want to be free. Lock me up. I don't want to be free. Remember in Law 8, how I said, also, if you notice, I'm holding my pink Barbie tumbler. Now it's because I'm also drinking my iced coffee while I'm talking. But if you remember in Law 8, when I said that everybody is mentally imprisoned, they're imprisoned in their own minds through their self-absorption. This is a similar line of thinking. A lot of us think that the truth is going to set us free, but in reality, it's just imprisoning us even more. It's adding to our sentence. The truth is not going to set you free. If it does set you free, you're probably coming out on like parole or something. So you got your little ankle monitor on. Obviously, I understand in a situation where, for example, you've been sitting on something really heavy, like a big secret, or you did something and you just need to clear your conscience. Sure, in that case, yeah, it'll probably set you free and get you in a lot of trouble. But in a lot of other cases, it does not set you free, babes. Just please don't add to your sentence, okay? So it's example time, and I have an interesting example for you all today. So, who can tell me about a man named Gonzalo Pizarro? Anyone in the class? No? Okay, well, let me tell y'all about this buffoon. So, Gonzalo Pizarro was a Spanish conquistador, which is basically a glorified colonist, and he was around in the 16th century when the Spanish Empire was expanding into South and Central America. And basically, they were just different places and trying to get natural resources and power and all that nonsense. And around this time, there's also this huge hype around this mythical city of gold called El Dorado, which also had a king who was also referenced as El Dorado, who was the super rich king who would like cover himself in gold dust every single day because he was so rich and amazing. And a lot of colonists were going feral over El Dorado because they just thought this is such a huge opportunity to basically plunder a village and get a bunch of money and natural resources out of it. And one of those people who was going feral was none other than the buffoon Gonzalo Pizarro. So in 1541, he led an expedition in this unexplored region east of Quito, which is in modern day Ecuador. Sorry, I keep going back between pronouncing these words properly and then pronouncing them not well, but I'm like, I speak Spanish, so I might as well pronounce them well, but I don't want to sound like a know-it-all. Anyway, so he led an expedition in 1541 in search of El Dorado. And he was equipped in this expedition with 200 Spaniards, around 4,000 natives, and lots of dogs and horses and animals. And so this giant expedition sets off, and they're just marching in these unexplored territories looking for this made up city. And every time they found native tribes or groups along the way, they would question them and be like, okay, where's El Dorado? Which direction do we go in? Like, what do you know about him? And if anyone they questioned didn't know what El Dorado is, because it's literally a made up place, guess what Pizarro would do? He wouldn't be like, oh, okay, thank you for your time, bye. No. He would torture and kill them. So anyway, word spread among the native people and communities in that area. And so a lot of the time when these communities would encounter Pizarro and he asked them, where is El Dorado, they would just make up some lie. They would make up stories about El Dorado. They would give probably like incorrect directions. Oh yeah, you have to go east this way, and then when you get to this area, like turn north, blah blah blah. And so Gonzalo Pizarro and all the people and animals he took on this expedition went around in circles for 2,000 miles for a year and a half. So Gonzalo Pizarro is an example of somebody who would have used the truth with bad intentions. So if there's anybody you don't want to let into your garden, it's some idiot like Gonzalo Pizarro. And we're going to talk about those people because there are a lot of them. Before we get into anything else, let me say this. This law and the whole concept of protecting your truth is not based on cynicism or distrust. It's about protecting your garden by setting up fences, not walls, as some people would suggest, but fences. And fences have doors. Because setting up boundaries is not an act of hatred or an act of cynicism, it's an act of self-respect, like our friend Jordan Peterson said. And it's not that I don't trust people, it's that I understand human nature. I understand the society we live in. I understand the ruthless, patriarchal world that we are all living in. And I know that not everyone has my best interest at heart, because why would they? I have my best interest at heart. That's all that matters. So I'm not going out with a distrust or a sense of hatred. I'm just going out protecting myself. Because we live in a cutthroat world. You don't get extra points for being a good person. You don't get extra points for suffering. If you want to go and win the Suffering Olympics and get a gold medal, then by all means, go ahead. That's not a competition I want to win. Because telling somebody your truth before you even get to know them is like you're playing a card game and you're just showing everybody the hand that you're dealt before you even know what the rules of the game are. So there are different tiers of people. There's people who want to access your truth so that they can take advantage of you. For example, they want to figure out what your vulnerabilities and your fears are so that they can use it against you. Then there are people who want to access your truth so that they can categorize you in a certain way. For example, men you're dating. They might want to find out your body count or if you went through a phase where you dated a lot of people so that they can categorize you. Is this going to be a wife or is this going to be a booty call? And all the while, they're probably hiding their body count that's like in the quadruple digits and they have like a strain of an STI named after them or something. Then there are people who want to use your truth so that they can fill a void within themselves, like an insecure person who wants to figure out what your insecurities are so that they can feed off of your insecurities. And then maybe they want to take jabs at you because that will make them feel better. And then they think that they're dragging you down to be in the same place that they are. So a little bit similar to that tier of people who want to use your truth against you. But I think the main difference here is that this type of person, the one who wants to use your insecurities to fill a void, maybe they're just using it as like a mental thing. So they're aware of it and they feel better about themselves just knowing your insecurities. And then of course there's a tier of people who use your truth to support you and to be there for you, who know your vulnerabilities and who want to, water your garden and spray some fertilizer on the soil for you. And I may have forgotten some tiers of people. So if you're listening to this and you're like, actually, I think there's another category, then let me know. Share it with the class. And I think it's also really important to trust your intuition because I think as women, we have a very strong sense of intuition. And a gut feeling is actually very much psychological. It doesn't happen in your gut. It's your brain processing things that you might not consciously be registering while you're looking at someone and talking to them, but your subconscious brain is picking up on people's tone of voice, their body language, a micro expression that might have flashed on their face for like a fraction of a second, and it's interpreting all of these signals and making sense of them. So that's when you get a gut feeling that something is off. Your brain is actually picking up a lot of cues from the person you're talking to that they are not trustworthy in this example. So never go against your gut feeling, ever. If you have a feeling that someone is lying to you or someone is trying to manipulate you to get your truth out of you, you are probably right. And I think in the world we live in, there's a lot of emphasis on logic and evidence and blah, 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 which is valid. Like a lot of things should be logical, should be supported by evidence. But then there's things that might not be as quote unquote logical, but they still make a lot of sense, like a gut feeling. And a lot of the time, you know how you have a gut feeling about something, but you might not be able to articulate it well or explain it, especially if you're talking to a guy. That's because I feel like a lot of the time as women, our gut feeling is not valued and it's not seen as a valid interpretation of the world. And I just think that's BS. And you know what? Let's apply to this law to that. Let's say you have a gut feeling about something and you have to tell a guy about it. Make something up. Don't say, oh, I have a gut feeling about this. Make it sound like it's the most scientific, well researched, well evidenced piece of information you've ever come across in your life. And you know what's interesting is there is so much morality around preaching honesty because the truth is actually one of the most valuable and powerful things in the world. It's literally why the entire justice system is around. It's to get to the truth. Imagine if we knew what actually happened to that Malaysia Airlines flight that disappeared in 2014. Or imagine if we actually knew truly what happened in the OJ trial. I think we all know what more or less happened, but like imagine if there was just like a unequivocal, like this is the truth. It's like the truth is this evasive thing that we're always trying to run after. We're always trying to capture it, but we never really can. Or if like two of your friends are fighting, for example, and each of them tells you their side of the argument and they give you different accounts of what happened, and you're like, what is the truth? Does the truth even exist? Or is there no the truth? Or is it just a truth? Everyone experiences a truth. Who the hell knows? Either way, the one thing I can tell you for certain is that you have your truth, which is your garden, your lived experiences, your everything that makes you you, and that needs to be protected at all costs. Anyone who's ever told you in your life that you have to be honest, that they value honesty, that they value an honest woman, was most likely trying to manipulate you while they lied to you. Because that morality is just a way to get us to play fair in an unfair world. And part of the reason the world is so unfair is because everyone is lying and they get ahead because of it. For example, in the sport of bodybuilding, to become a pro, you have to take steroids because everyone is taking steroids. So if you go in and you're like, you know what, I'm going to do this all natural, I'm not going to take steroids, I'm not going to take anything, great. But guess what? You're literally not going to get anywhere because the bar is set to a level that you can only attain by taking steroids. And I think that applies to life. There's a lot of bars that have been set because people have lied to set that bar. If you come in as an honest person, you're never going to get to that bar. You just can't unless you're some like extraordinary divine being. I don't want to sound like some kind of conspiracy theorist or like a wackadoodle, but it is easier to control us when we all think that everyone else is telling us the truth, when we're naive. And one of the ways to successfully navigate through the patriarchy and make sure that you are coming out on top is to figure out the areas where we've been brainwashed and to unlearn the lies that we've been told. And this is one of them. This morality around always being honest, never lying, that is one of the ways the patriarchy keeps us in the dark. And as a woman, people are going to pressure you and expect you to share your truth with them. And that's all because people understand how valuable your truth is. People understand that your garden is like this VIP area in the back of the club that has a rope, has a bouncer. You can't even, like, it's not even part of those $10,000 tables you get. This is like the $250,000 tables. And if I need to remind you, remember that men will lie to you to get access to your body and to get emotional labor out of you. Or employers. Employers will lie to you so they can get access to your intellectual, maybe your physical labor at the lowest cost possible to them. People are going to lie to you so that they can use you. So what is your excuse for not lying just so that you can protect yourself? Please, I'm listening. What is your excuse? Yeah, there is none. Exactly. And if you feel guilty about it, then go to law number 7, which is remove guilt from your emotions. Listen to that and then come back to this. As a woman, you cannot succeed in the patriarchy if you feel guilt. You just can't, because that is one of the main emotions that is meant to control us. If you feel guilt, you're debilitated. You can't do anything. So if you need to take a step back and go listen to that law and listen to things other people have said about reprogramming yourself to not feel guilt, then do that and then come back to this. I feel like as we're getting more and more advanced in these laws, they're like building on each other. You kind of need to know previous ones in order to be successful at subsequent ones. And another thing is that most people don't actually want to hear the truth. They don't. For example, a job interviewer asks you, why do you want this job? Well, because no one else called me back, or I need to pay my bills, or your CEO is hot. They don't want to hear those reasons. They want to hear how you're obsessed with their company and you love them so much and you're going to devote your life to making sure that the shareholders get value. That's what they want to hear. So they don't actually want to hear the truth. Or if a man asks you, what do you see in me? Oh, I see someone who just, you're so caring and you make me feel so safe and so cared for. When in reality, you're like, the only reason I'm with you is for your money. So people don't actually want to hear the truth. So why are you going to give them something they don't want to hear? And if you don't know how someone is going to react, then you don't want to give them the truth. You don't want to be vulnerable to someone if you don't know if they're going to take that vulnerability that you've shared and treat it with care and with compassion and empathy, or if they're going to use it against you and spit it back into your face. And a good way to test this is to present part of your truth as someone else's truth. So for example, and this is kind of a silly example, let's say you had a little bit of a serial dating phase in university and you want to see if your boyfriend is going to be cool with that or if he's going to like lose his mind. My opinion is they don't need to know about this anyway. You don't have to share this information with your man, but let's just use this example. Instead of telling him, hey, I slept around with lots of people in university, you can be like, oh, I'm having a dinner with one of my university friends tonight. And it's funny, I remember when she was always going out and having lots of dates and stuff. It looked like she was having lots of fun, something like that. And then he'll be like, oh, women who sleep around with people are so disgusting. Da, 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 da. And then you got his reaction right there. Obviously, you want to frame it and present it in a way where you're not like degrading your friend, because the way you frame a statement is also going to determine how the person responds to it. And again, all of this is not because I am cynical. It's not because I don't trust people. It's just that I know people. I know human nature. I understand it. So you don't approach things out of a place of mistrust or cynicism or hatred or anger. Everything is coming from a place of self-love and self-protection. That is the ultimate form of self-care. An interesting example is this podcast. A lot of my friends don't actually know about my podcast. Some of them do. And I've actually lost several friends since I started this podcast, which is actually crazy. But that's an example of people who took that truth and didn't have my best interest at heart. Sucks to suck, but that's just a learning for me. Like, this podcast is part of my garden, and not everyone deserves access to knowing it. In a way, it's also so cute because all of you guys are accessing this garden. Like, I've put a door for you and you're all here, and in a way you're all watering it, and it's just so cute. Let's talk about reversals. You have to take a step back and ask yourself, why are you withholding part of the truth? And you're doing all of this with a purpose, self-protection or self-interest. And even worse than that, you're never lying to hurt someone, to put them down, to pull a Gonzalo Pizarro. You're never doing any of that. It's only for your own sake of self-protection and self-love. And if you're lying for its own sake, there's a term for that. It's called being a pathological liar. There are very few things that I talk about on this podcast that are done for their own sake. There's usually some kind of goal that's leading all of these actions. And the goal in this case is either protecting yourself or realizing your self-interest. And remember how I was talking earlier about the Jordan Peterson lectures that I was listening to? So aside from giving me a really great analogy, he also has a lot of content about why lying is bad and why being truthful is something very powerful that you can do for yourself. And he says that lying creates a false truth and a false you, and you become a victim to habitual lying. Because as you continue lying, you're forming these unconscious habits that change the way that you see the world. And these are valid things. I'm not saying that he's wrong, but I don't think the type of lying that he's talking about is the same as the one we're talking about, because we're not habitually lying. We're not pathological liars. We're actually doing something that he says in another one of his lectures, which is withholding our truth and saving it for people who deserve access to it. So it's not like we're going out lying with no intention, just trying to mislead people and make up these false stories that then in turn change the way that we see the world. Now we're seeing everything as a lie. No, we're much more calculated than that. We're lying to preserve our garden. And I don't even want to call them lies, because the word lying has this connotation of purposefully misleading people with bad intentions. That's not what we're doing. We don't have bad intentions. We're trying to protect ourselves from people with bad intentions. So miss me with all of that. All right, with all of that, I'm going to close this episode with yet another Jordan Peterson quote. If I had to take a shot every time I mention Jordan Peterson in this episode, I would have to get my stomach pumped. But here's the quote. With every choice you make, you either elevate or degrade yourself. So whatever you do with your truth, whether you're giving no truth, part of the truth, most of the truth, make sure you are being elevated in that decision. And I never said in this episode giving all of your truth, because all of the truth is only reserved for you. That is for your eyes only. You've spent your whole life building this amazing garden and tending to it and making sure that it grows, and really only open the gate for people you're 110% certain that they are deserving of that access. Because once you let someone in, they can't really get out. That's it. It's like a one-way gate. All right, with that, thank you everybody for tuning into this episode. I'm so happy we're at law number 10. I'm so excited to get to like law 20, law 50, law 100. So thank you so much. If you have any suggestions on future laws, maybe you have an experience that you think could turn into a law, let me know. Send me a DM. Every time I get a DM from one of you guys, I'm like excited. I'm so excited to open this and see what you have to say. So please get in touch with me if you want to share any thoughts, if you want to share any feedback, let me know. My DMs are always open. And just don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building you step foot in. All right, until next time, stay bad. Love you. Bye.